Hello, this is Good Fight Games podcast. This is my first episode in a while, and I'm happy to say that at least for now, I'm back. So a lot has happened since episode 4 of Good Fight Games podcast. So let me fill you in a little bit with what happened to me during these last 4 or 5 months. So back on December 23rd, just a couple of days before Christmas, I had a stroke, and it took me out for a while. Something new also is we're doing this audio and video, so whichever you prefer, YouTube or whatever podcast service I happen to use. But again, Good Fight Games podcast. And so anyway, I had a stroke on December 23rd, and it was quite devastating, at least for me and my family. For a while, I wasn't able to speak normally, and you may notice some inconsistencies now, or words that are harder to understand, but my speech is coming back, which is a gift from God. Also, when I had my stroke, I lost the ability to walk for a while, which was, again, devastating. And I also lost the use of my left hand for the time being. And now I'm currently in physical therapy, and I'm doing exercises and all the stuff they recommend to regain function of my voice, of my hand, of my walking abilities. So I am on the road to recovery. And speaking of recovery, I just wanted to say thank you to Madonna Rehabilitation Hospital in Lincoln, Nebraska. They did amazing work, and they're so kind, and the facilities are awesome, and the nursing staff and therapists are fantastic as well. So a world-class place. If you ever have a stroke or brain injury, that is the place to be. Lincoln, Nebraska, Madonna Rehab Hospital. So basically what happened with my stroke is I have a blood vessel disorder called stenosis. Now, stenosis typically affects people who are elderly, 70s and 80s, because it's a narrowing of blood vessels. Typically it's found in the spinal cord of people, but in my case it was in my brain, specifically on my right MCA. So that's why my left side has been affected, as well as my speech, because of the location of the stroke. Now, when I began meeting with my doctors, they were saying that surgery could be a possibility with a stent device or a bypass. Thankfully, we've decided to, at least for now, stay away from those two options and to focus on medication and hopefully eliminating the stroke blood clot that way, and also getting healthier. Since my stroke, I've started to get healthier, hopefully. I've lost around 30 pounds, a couple pant sizes, which is good. Not only for my stroke, but also just for my general health and well-being, as well as making sure that my diabetes is better under control. So I have been keeping up with blood sugars and eating the way I'm supposed to, which is hard, especially if you've eaten the way you wanted to eat for your entire life, and now you're told you can't do these things. But if you don't do these things, then it could be the end of your life. So what's important? More important, an extra cheeseburger or an extra 10 or 15 years. So, with my kids, definitely the 10 or 15 years, so I'll say no to the extra cheeseburger. So, yeah. But as far as recovery is concerned, my current occupational therapist told me that with having with a stroke, the window for recovery for my hand is upwards of 16 months, I believe she said. So I still have a little bit, hopefully, for my hand, so I can type again and do all my things I normally did with my left hand. Which brings me to my first video game topic today. Specifically, accessibility in games. Now, this has been a hot topic this last few weeks, especially with Sakura coming out and people saying it's too hard and that there should be an easy mode for players who aren't as skilled. There's also the debate of accessibility, like people like myself now with disabilities. Currently, I can only use my right hand to play video games, so I've been playing with my mouth for the joystick, and different things to try to be able to do. My favorite hobby is to play video games. So that's the other side of accessibility. So I think people are arguing over two sides, over different things than what people think they're arguing about. Again, being in an easy game, or making sure people can even attempt to play your game. Now, for me, I don't want my disability to define who I am. Rather, I want to use this as an opportunity to grow, to strengthen my faith in God, and to believe in myself more so than I have before. So I don't want an easy mode. I don't want there to be any sort of hand holding or anything like that. I want to play the game the way it's meant to be played. Do I have to do that differently? Sure, for a while, but hopefully as I recover, I'll regain the function and use of my hand like I was previously. So that's my thoughts on accessibility and accessibility. Again, two different arguments, whether something is easy or whether something can be played. Now, on the topic of Sekiro, that game is pretty difficult. I've been playing it a little bit off and on, and playing one-handed has been pretty hard, especially with some of these mini bosses like General Tenzin, Yamamushi, or the Chained Ogre. Definitely difficult playing with one hand and using your mouth to move the joystick so your character moves. It's pretty hard to get those timing down to fight the way it's meant to be fought and use your shinobi abilities the way you're supposed to use your shinobi abilities. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. So again, I want to play the games the way they're supposed to be played, regardless if it's hard or easy. So I still haven't made it to the first real boss yet, but hopefully I can get there pretty soon. So accessible games or accessibility, again, two different arguments, but for some reason they are being confused now with games media. And speaking of accessibility with games, over these last few months, with again becoming disabled with my hand, I've found some really great companies that help people who like to play video games get back into doing what they like to do. One of them is Warfighter Engaged. The other is Able Gamers. And what they do is they help provide people with controllers and that sort of thing who have disabilities. And those companies will find a way to get you playing the games that you like again. Now, the only one-handed controller that I can find that's easily available for purchase, I guess two different companies. One is Ben Heck, who makes Xbox One controllers, and then the other company that does Xbox One and PS4 controllers is Evil controllers. Now, when my Evil controller comes, I will do an unboxing video to show you exactly what's in the package and how it will help me play video games with one hand. Again, that's forthcoming. Also, there's a guy on Etsy that makes 3D printed adapters for a Switch remote, so it holds both Joy-Cons back to back to where you're able to play the Switch with one hand too. So I hope Evil Games or Ben Heck or someone like those guys are able to make a one-handed Pro controller for the Nintendo Switch. Because again, that's a great system to play with your kids and family. So hopefully they will get that taken care of for us. Also, during my time of being disabled now, currently, I found some other one-handed gamers on YouTube, which has been pretty enlightening just to see how other people do it, to show me that they're able to do it and they haven't lost their passion for what they love, which is inspiring for me because I'm not a very patient person, and if you know me personally, you know that to be true. You know that I'm not very patient. I'm not very patient. And the fact that I'm a pastor and that I had to be taken care of by nurses and doctors and therapists for several months put things into perspective for me. Namely, not be afraid to ask for help, whether it's from a nurse or from my wife. Just making sure that, if something's not being done or if I need assistance with something, that I'm not bullheaded enough to ignore the problem and just not do what I need to get done. So again, thank you for those who are nurses and therapists, and as well as my wife for being supportive and helping me during this time. And since I am a pastor, I just want to say thank you to my congregation. Great people in Pierce, Nebraska, great community, and my church family are awesome. They've been really understanding of my current situation and are making things easier to come back into the ministerial office to be their pastor. I'm pretty confident that my church loves me and I love my church. Now I'm just trying to get healthy and get back into the pulpit and back out into people's houses and into the community to proclaim Jesus Christ. Now, the bad part about having my stroke was the fact that I missed Christmas. I was able to preach all the way through Advent, but then again, my stroke happened December 23rd, which was a Sunday. I wasn't able to do my Christmas services that I normally do, which includes a candlelight service. And I also missed all of Lent and Easter. Now, something I started when I came out here to Pierce, Nebraska as a pastor was an Easter Vigil. I love that service. And so hopefully, God willing, next year I'll be able to be back in the pulpit to perform the Easter Vigil and have the Lord's Supper. So that's my hope and prayer, to be back to normal functioning and to be back shepherding my flock. Now, as far as things I'm playing currently, one of the games I'm still trying to get through for a review for Geeks Under Grace is Darksiders 3. Now, I'll be honest, the game is okay. I don't know, THQ Nordic and Darksiders just really don't speak to me all that well. I mean, they're good, fine games, and they're hack and slash games, so I mean they're fun, but I just find them to be lacking in some way. Whether it's character and level diversity or it's actual gameplay mechanics, I can't put my finger on it, but something just isn't clicking with me with the Darksiders and THQ Nordic. again, good company. These games are obviously liked. This is the third Darksiders game, so I don't think it's the game. I think the problem is me with this. Just the fact that it's not clicking for me. Another game that I'm playing through is Sekiro. Again, this is your new From Software game. So it's hard as nails. Has great action. It takes place in a 16th century Japan. It's the Sengoku period. So again, 1600s, if not earlier. So the game is beautiful. And their fictionalized version of Japan that From Software has created. And you are a one-armed shinobi, which in my case is kind of fun because I'm currently a one-armed pastor, a one-armed man. So I understand how difficult it must be for the wolf to go through this world with one arm, while I'm trying to go through this world with one arm. So I feel a certain kinship with Wolf in that game. Gameplay, like I said, is hard as nails. It's really quick, exciting. It gets your heart pumping. Whether or not you're good at From Software games or not, that's not important. It's whether or not you're having a good time. So if you play video games, I definitely recommend Sekiro to those of you who are in for a challenge, who want to see a beautiful game, and again, to have a fantastic story revealed to you through lore, through world items, and through observation. Pick up Sekiro. Now, is this game for everyone? No. This goes back to the accessibility and accessible game discussion we had just a few moments ago. Now, this game definitely is not for everyone. Probably I would be better suited to play with both hands, so I probably should have waited, but I just couldn't do that. Again, I love From Software games, whether it's Dark Souls, Bloodborne, or now Sekiro. These games cater to a certain audience, and this is the whole make a game easy discussion, or add an easy mode to games. Now, if From Software added an easy mode to their games, it wouldn't be the same. Could more people play these games? Definitely, but would it be the same thrill that you have from beating the Chained Ogre, or one of the generals, or the Headless Ape? Definitely not. Because the thing about Hidetaka Miyazaki was when he was first started as a game developer, he was learning English through reading books. And so he didn't understand a lot of what he was reading, so he had to fill in parts of the story, which is the same thing that happens with. So it was a challenge for Miyazaki, which is a challenge for us as gamers. There's not a lot of story generally in From Software games. Everything you learn about the world and the game is things that you piece together yourself. You fill in the blanks. So that's the same thing about From Software gameplay. There's a definite learning curve. You have to be defeated by these bosses or enemies several times to learn their patterns, to hate to say it, but to get good at these games. It's not for everyone, unfortunately. But I mean, can anyone play these games? Definitely. I heard somewhere or read somewhere that the test for Miyazaki games is whether or not he can beat the boss or not. So if he can defeat the enemies in the game, which are challenging, so can we. Now, I might argue with the fact with Lawrence or Koss, the orphan Koss from Bloodborne, because I had a heck of a time fighting those guys. But if Miyazaki can defeat them after hours and maybe even a few co-op players joining forces, then you can too. Now the thing about Sekiro is the fact that there is no online component. There's no cooperation from friends. So you indeed have to get good for Sekiro, which again is not impossible. There's one guy who just beat it with the Donkey Kong Country bongo drums. So if he can beat it with bongo drums, you can beat it with one hand. In addition to Sekiro, I just now downloaded Days Gone. I haven't had a chance to play it yet because I've been busy with therapy and things, but I'm excited to jump in with Days Gone. Now the thing about Days Gone is that it's not been reviewing very well, which brings me to one more hot topic, game reviews. Now, again, I've been writing game reviews for a company called Geeks this last year, which has been an awesome opportunity, again, to get better at my writing skills, but also my ability to look at a game objectively and find out truly what's good about a game and what's bad about a game and what needs to be improved and what is a spectacle of a game. Now, game reviews. I used to put a lot of trust in certain websites for game reviews, and I would sometimes base my decision to buy a game or not based off how well the game reviewed. Now, again, I am a Sony fan, so in my eyes, Sony, it takes a lot for Sony to drop the ball. For me, the biggest ball drop Sony had this last generation was probably The Order. Now, The Order had a good story, it had fun gameplay, it just needed some more substance to it. It needed a few more hours of gameplay, it needed maybe a multiplayer component, but it didn't have those things. So will Ready at Dawn have another chance to play The Order 2, or to develop The Order 2, or 1887, who knows? Maybe we can get Shuhei Yoshida to help us get a second order through Ready at Dawn. Now, I hope the same thing doesn't happen to Sony Bend, the company that developed and created Days Gone. Again, Sony Bend, this is their first PS4 game. They did have some success with some PlayStation Vita games, such as Uncharted Golden Abyss. Now, it would be a shame if that game never makes it to PS4, because it's a canonical Uncharted game. There's some really awesome moments in that, and for a handheld AAA game on the PlayStation Vita, it was amazing. Now, there were some gimmicky things where you had to hold the Vita up to a light to reveal certain things from puzzles, and touch the screen to reveal things under sand. So there were some of those gimmicky things that can surely be solved with the PlayStation touchpad on the DualShock 4. Joking, obviously, but you know what I mean. So that was really their only and Syphon Filter games. They made Syphon Filter games, which were fantastic games for the PlayStation 1 era. But this has been their first PS4 game, so I'm excited to jump into it and see where I am led in Oregon, and how I can get by the zombies, or freakers as they're called in this game. But anyway, as far as game reviews go, we have to think about subjective, and we have to think about this. We have to think about this subjectively and objectively. Now, objectively, there may be some issues with the game, gameplay issues, enemy design, user interface, all these different components that make a bad game. Now, subjectively, a game might be really fun, but review really poorly. Again, case in point is the Order. I thought the Order, gameplay-wise, was a lot of fun, but objectively, there were a lot of issues. So I don't like people using game scores as a way to purchase a game any longer. I think we need to look at this objectively and subjectively, whether or not a game is good, whether or not a person has fun or not. And again, those are all subjective things, whether or not a person enjoys something or not. So maybe we should adopt, I think it's Kotaku that uses a thumbs up or thumbs down, or even a play this game like a yes, no, or later type mentality. That might be a way that we should, rate games, whether or not it has potential or if it's dead in the water. Which brings us to one more topic, and that's the topic of EA. Now, EA has had, specifically Bioware. Bioware is used to be a great company. Your Dragon Age games, and then your Mass Effect trilogy. Those games were wonderful. They were great RPGs. Now, recently they've released Mass Effect Andromeda, which again, objectively was not a good game, but subjectively it was okay. There were a few issues with it, obviously, gameplay-wise, but it was a Mass Effect game. It was still fun. There were some weird dialogue type things and animations, but does that make it a bad game? No, by no means. But it did objectively have a few issues. But the thing with BioWare is they seem to be dropping the ball on games. Mass Effect Andromeda and now currently Anthem. Now I wish that BioWare and the EA will listen to their supporters, their fans, for what they want to do, what they want to play next. And I think, and hopefully they'll do this, but I wish they would do a Mass Effect trilogy reboot, remake for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And maybe even the Nintendo Switch. I don't know if it's capable of that or not, but to bring those games back that are truly beloved by people, and to give Star Wars a fighting chance. The Battlefield games, they were okay. The whole loot box thing what made them crappy. But they had a story mode in it, which it wasn't very long, but it was still a nice thing to have in a Star Wars game. Because story is king, as Colin Moriarty says, and I myself say. You need to have a good story for a good game. So, anyway, I hope that EA, and more specifically BioWare, I hope they get another chance for another game. BioWare was one of my favorite developers. Things like Jade Empire, Knights of the Old Republic, Mass Effect, the original trilogy, Dragon Age. Again, all wonderful games. All things people wanted. Not all this loot box crap. Not all this random things that people necessarily don't care for. And there is a great article right now on Kotaku that Jason Schreier wrote about BioWare and all of Anthem's issues that you should check out if you have any interest in game journalism, game development. You should check it out. Again, Kotaku.com, Jason Schreier, an article about BioWare and EA and the turbulent development period. Now, what's interesting is he also wrote an article several months ago, probably closer to a year ago, about Mass Effect Andromeda. And funny, it's both an EA BioWare game, and the kind of junk they're pulling with their employees. The whole game crunch thing. Now, I don't think game crunch is a bad thing. As a pastor, we always have busy times of year, and that's definitely Christmas and Easter, where we have to pull in a few extra hours to make sure all the services go on without a hitch. Same thing with like hospital calls or funerals. You don't plan for these things, but they do happen. People get sick, and unfortunately, people die. And you have to be there for the grieving family or the sick person. And will that cut into your personal time? Will that cut into your family time? Yes, but as a pastor, your obligation is to those sick and hurting people. And the same thing with this is probably a bad analogy, but like with game developers, you're on a contract. You're contracted to make this game, so do you need to put in a few extra hours to make sure it's done and the quality work is done? Definitely. So I don't know what the big deal is about, crunch time and how awful it is, because I don't know. As a seminary student, I would write papers all night sometime. As a dad, I'd stay up with my sick kid when they were sick all night and go to school the next day. Sometimes you just have to man up or stop complaining and just deal with it. That's probably not a very pastorally thing to say, but it's also the truth. But anyway, God bless. Have a good day. Again, this is Good Fight Games podcast, now in video format, and we'll see how that goes. Alright, have a good day. Bye-bye. Hello, this is Good Fight Games podcast. This is my first episode. Happy to say that, at least for now, I'm back. So